What's going on, everyone? This is Kevin here, coming at you with my comparison of the OnePlus 13 versus OnePlus 13R. So without further ado, let's get started. So this is the OnePlus 13, and this is the OnePlus 13R. Now I'd like to thank OnePlus for being kind enough for sending both of these phones out to me to cover here on the channel, but of course all opinions expressed in this video are completely my own. Now, as the names of these two phones imply, the OnePlus 13 and 13R are the successors to last year's OnePlus 12 series. The 13R is their mid-range smartphone, whereas the 13 is their full-on flagship. Now, I asked OnePlus why there is no OnePlus 13 Pro, and the reason for that is because they wanted to give the 13 everything. They don't want a Pro version and a regular version of their flagship. They just want their one flagship to be the phone that does it all. Now, in comparison with the 13R, things are a bit more humble here in the sense that, while this phone does offer quite a bit, it's certainly nowhere near what we're getting here with the regular 13. So there certainly are quite a few differences here with these devices, and definitely when it comes to price, that's also a very big difference. So for the OnePlus 13R, this phone is offered at an MSRP of $599 compared to $899 for the 13. In addition to that, for a limited time, you can actually get double the amount of storage with the 13 for the same price. So for $899, you can actually get the 512GB model of the phone, which really gives this phone even more value. Now, the first thing I want to go over are the differences and similarities when it comes to the displays here on these two devices. So at first glance, things do look very similar. Of course, both phones do have very small bezels all around, and then they both do have hole punches up top there for the front-facing cameras. And on that note, the front camera with the 13 is 32 megapixels compared to 16 megapixels for the front-facing camera on the 13R. The displays here on these two phones are slightly different in size, with the 13 having a 6.82-inch display, compared to a slightly smaller 6.78-inch display here with the 13R. Now, side by side, these two phones do seem very similar, and I think the biggest difference is that with the 13, the bezels are just a little bit smaller, which does allow that bigger display size, despite the actual chassis of these two phones being pretty much the same. Another difference with the display is that with the OnePlus 13, the display here is actually raised in all ways. So it's not the traditional curved display that, honestly, I really don't even like that much, but it's a slight curve, but it's equal on all sides. So it's really hard to kind of see here in the video. You can kind of tell there what I'm talking about, but it is symmetrical in all ways, but the actual glass does go up about maybe 0.5 millimeter from the regular side of the phone here. So anyway, just really a unique effect here, and it really makes this phone feel even more user-friendly, and I really like this implementation and this whole idea in general. Whereas with the 13R in comparison, it's really your more traditional flat display that you'd find with pretty much any smartphone. Now, fortunately, both of these displays do look really good. With both of these phones, we are getting LTPO AMOLED, and then they both do feature 120Hz refresh rate displays. Now, we do have a slightly higher display resolution here with the 13, giving us a PPI 510 compared to a PPI 450 with the 13R. And then both phones do feature a 19.8:9 aspect ratio, and then again, both phones do have very small bezels all throughout. Now, this might be different based on the region that you're in, but in the US, for the 13R, this phone is only offered with 256 gigabytes of storage, which honestly is a lot of storage, especially for a mid-range smartphone. Now, there is no microSD card expansion with either of these two phones, so keep that in mind, but still, it's really impressive how much internal storage we're getting here with the 13R. Now, in comparison, the base model of the 13 also has 256, but again, at least for now, you can get this phone in 512 gigabytes for the same price that you normally buy it for with 256. And then if 512 gigabytes is not enough for you, you can actually get the OnePlus 13 in 1 terabyte. Now, with the OnePlus 13, we are getting wireless charging here, and the wireless charging is 50 watts, which is really impressive. Now, to get those speeds, you do have to use the official OnePlus wireless charger, which I'll be showing you more in a separate video, but that's really impressive. And then unfortunately, with the 12R, there is no wireless charging at all. Now, both of these phones do have face unlock, but in addition to that, they both have in-display fingerprint sensors. Now, with the OnePlus 13 this year, we're getting one of the best fingerprint sensors. We're getting ultrasonic technology, whereas the 13R uses more traditional in-display fingerprint sensing tech. But you can see with both phones it does work fine, but it does work a bit better here with the 13, so there is a difference there. Now, take a look at the cameras in the back of these two phones. They at first glance do look similar, but they are very different. So with the OnePlus 13, we're getting a 50 megapixel main camera, a 50 megapixel ultra wide angle camera, and we're also getting a 50 megapixel telephoto camera, giving us a 3x optical zoom. And then with the 13R, we're getting a 50 megapixel main camera, an 8 megapixel ultra wide angle camera, and then finally we are getting a 50 megapixel 2x telephoto camera. So it is cool to see that even though the 13R is a mid-range smartphone, this phone actually is giving us a telephoto camera. And then with both phones, we are getting portrait mode for both the front and rear cameras. And then with the OnePlus 13, this phone does support up to 8K video, whereas we're getting 4K video here with the 13R for the rear camera. And then for the front cameras in both phones, the 13 does max out at 4K, whereas the front-facing camera on the 13R is only 1080p, which is a bit unfortunate. And then when it comes to RAM and processor, there are some pretty big differences here. So with the OnePlus 13, we are getting 16 gigabytes of RAM compared to 12 gigabytes of RAM with the 13R. And then the processors here are different as well. With the 13, we're getting the latest Qualcomm Snapdragon 8 Elite processor compared to the Qualcomm Snapdragon 8 Gen 3 with the 13R. So honestly though, having the Gen 3 here with the 13R is very impressive. That was literally last year's flagship processor. So the fact that we are getting that here with a mid-range phone like this one, especially makes this device very impressive. So I do appreciate that. Now, as far as battery capacity and charging go, both of these phones do have 6,000 milliamp hour internal batteries, along with 80 watt fast charging. So fortunately, both phones do come with fast chargers in the box, which is excellent. And then the fact that we are getting very large batteries here at 6,000 milliamp hours makes things even better. But honestly, that 80 watt fast charging especially makes these phones unique. That's some of the fastest charging out there, and it really does make a difference when using these devices day to day. Now, both phones do have NFC. They also have IR blasters at the top, so you can control your TV. And then both phones do have stereo speakers as well. But one big difference, though, is that with the OnePlus 13, this phone is both IP68 and IP69 certified, which means the phone can go underwater for up to 1.5 meters for up to 30 minutes, but also it can withstand higher temperatures of water, as well as jets. So that makes this phone especially durable. But unfortunately, there are no ratings like that for the 13R. Now, aesthetically, these two phones are very different. Clearly, you can see here. So the first thing is, with the OnePlus 13, keep in mind this phone does come in 3 different colors, and each color does actually have a different back material, which is especially unique. Whereas with the OnePlus 13R, this phone does come in 2 different colors as well, but it's pretty much the same material on both. But the good thing is, at least given the constraints they probably had to deal with for pricing, we actually have a pretty nice material here with the 13R. So this device does have a plastic finish, of course, but I do like that it's kind of a matte finish, but at the same time it has kind of this frosted look to it. The result of it is that it doesn't really pick up too many fingerprints. And on that note, the 13 also doesn't pick up fingerprints, which I appreciate. But honestly, both phones do feel of high quality, and especially if you put either of them in a case, you probably couldn't really tell that one was a flagship and one is a mid-ranger. Now, on the left side of both devices, we do have the mute switch here, which is pretty cool. So basically with this switch, you can move the switch to ring, vibrate, and then silent. So you can do this on both devices. It's the same functionality, and that's really a nice underrated feature that I wish more smartphones still had. Then on the right side, we have volume up, volume down, and the power button. And then up top here, the noise canceling microphone and IR blaster. And then on the bottom of the 2 phones, we have the slot for the SIM card. We have the microphone, speaker, and USB-C port for charging and data transfer. So in general, there's definitely a lot to like about both the OnePlus 13 and OnePlus 13R. And these 2 phones are definitely some of my top recommendations going into 2025. Now, I do already have a review out for the 13R, so if you want to learn more about this phone specifically, definitely check out that content, and my review for the 13 is coming out very soon. But this is Kevin here. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, give it a thumbs up, and I will see you in the next one. Take care and have a great rest of your day.